Given the current situation with the mainstream media pushing big time the ever increasing souring relationship between Russia and America off the back of the current Ukraine situation, before things get too silly, I'm going to expose both those countries, both America and Russia, and show at the highest level they're all in bed together. I'm going to do that by showing historical footage from recent years where American astronauts supposedly traveled to the International Space Station on Russian Soyuz rockets. The problem is, when we look at some clips from those historical missions, we get to see blatant, obvious fakery at play here, and of course the results of which expose both America and Russia and show that they lie, deceive, and manipulate their own people. So I'm going to show this before things get too silly, in the hope that some people will see this and realize the games, the manipulation that is at play here, and of course the seriousness of the situation now. We've got two historical missions here, Expedition 39 and Expedition 53. Expedition 39 had a crew of a Japanese commander, 3 Russians and 2 Americans. They travelled to the ISS on the Soyuz rocket, supposedly, and departed on this Russian Soyuz rocket. Okay? And the other mission is Expedition 53, where we've got a crew of, 3 Americans, 2 Russians, and an Italian. And these guys travelled to the ISS on the Soyuz and departed on the Soyuz Russian rocket. Okay, so these are the 2 missions we're going to look at, and these are the 2 missions that are going to expose both America and Russia and give the whole game away. Bear with me. Now, in this first clip from Expedition 39, we've got 2 American astronauts and a Japanese astronaut who've supposedly arrived at the space station on the Russian Soyuz rocket. The problem is, as we're about to see, the Japanese commander in the background is blatantly and obviously on a harness as he goes by. So let's have a look.
We could always go look out the cupola windows, and if you're really good at geography, which is not easy up there, I'll tell you, looking down at the Earth on a cloudy day, it's kind of hard to tell where you are. But if you can make out some of the land masses, you could recognize them. And then the other way is we have a computer program that
That was terrible, lads. Let me just bring him back. That's the commander of the ISS, a Japanese fella, blatantly attached to a harness in the background. What makes this even worse, he's got 2 American astronauts at the front here who supposedly travelled to this space station with him on a Russian rocket. So we've got Japan, Russia and America here, all with their fingers in the pantomime pot. Dear oh dear, and it only gets worse. In this second clip from Expedition 39, involving the 2 American astronauts, we get to see another technique used here by these people, in this instance augmented reality, where essentially the astronauts interact with items that aren't actually there. The problem is, sometimes they miscue where the item is, and as a result pick things up that aren't actually there, thinking that they're moving the hat or the microphone, but in turn, because they made a bit of a boo-boo and lost track of the augmented item, they kind of expose themselves, like this chap in the green top's going to do. He's going to think he's grabbing his mate's hat in a minute and putting it on the wall. The problem is, he didn't grab his mate's hat whatsoever, totally missed, lost track of where the hat was, and of course, as a result, exposed one of the techniques these people use. And in doing so, exposes Russia, exposes America for being in bed at the highest levels. Because remember, these 2 American astronauts supposedly got to the space station on a Russian rocket. So let's see this guy in the green give the game away.
When you look out the cupola, I guess so far for me, I like the waters, the shallow waters in the Caribbean or the atolls in the southeast Pacific are just beautiful. There's blue.
Yeah, that's the point he's realised. Oops, I seriously guffed up, because when we come back, we get to see the man here, look, pick up absolutely nothing.
In the southeast Pacific are just beautiful.
And again, picking up 0. Picks up absolutely nothing and puts what he thinks is the hat against the wall. But now his mate's like, no, I've still got the hat. Look, that look of realization. Oops. Yeah, what you've done, son, is exposed America and Russia and shown you're in bed together. Because you, sonny boy, supposedly traveled to this environment on a Russian rocket. But you've just exposed one of the techniques you guys use, augmented reality. And it's only going to get worse as we look at another mission now that supposedly involved American astronauts that used Russian rockets to get to this ridiculous International Space Station. Bear with me. And now we come to Expedition 53, where I've got two more clips that expose both America and Russia and of course space. The first clip involves Mark Vanden High. Mark is supposedly stranded on the International Space Station right now as the Russians are threatening not to let him come home by using their rockets. But we've already exposed all of this anyway with what we've already seen. So we know it's just a space pantomime production. But we're going to make it even worse for America and Russia by looking at these more clips where American astronauts, in this instance Expedition 53, where American astronauts supposedly used Russian rockets to get to the space station, but we've got blatant harness pantomimes going on here, as Mark Vanden High does a flip for a score during a live and makes it rather obvious, as we're about to see. So let's have a look. I mean, that is the most ridiculous, obvious fail if ever I saw it. Even the kid, bottom right, is like, as soon as I get home, I'm probably going to take this top off and burn it. That was shocking. As we get to see Mark blatantly on our harness. Look how he actually uses his hand here to take the sting out of his momentum by tugging there at the back of his harness. Ridiculous. And then this over-the-top pantomime performance. Woo! Ridiculous. Let's just see it in its whole entirety. Blatant, obvious harness pantomime of the lowest order. Terrible. Like I said, the kid's not impressed. The top's going in the bin. And it only gets worse. And like I said, this is American astronauts that supposedly got to the space station on Russian rockets, yet they're blatantly hanging off harnesses. Bear with me. And this final clip from Expedition 53, which involves 3 American astronauts that supposedly arrived at the space station on the Russian Soyuz rocket. But in this clip, the legend that is Randy, the 80s robot dance legend Bresnik, the man in the middle here, Randy kind of makes it rather obvious for all to see here as he tries to impress one of the kids during his live here by randomly doing a somersault. The problem is for Randy, he gets all caught up in his attachments of his harness and as a result has to bust out his old 80s robot dance moves to escape being all entangled in his harness. Very strange to see, and of course rather obvious when you actually watch it and see the mess Randy gets in, and of course the weird bizarre 80s robot dance moves he has to pull to get out of his entanglement. In case you're not familiar with 80s robot dancing, let's have a quick peep back in time. Now let's see Randy bust out his old school 80s robot dance moves to escape his entanglement harness pantomime that he finds himself in here as he tried to nail this somersault in supposed space. But of course in failing to do so, and then having to bust out his weird 80s robot dance moves, Randy kind of gives the game away yet again, and in doing so exposes America and Russia yet again. So take it away, Randy. Let's see some of them old school moves.
It's a pretty interesting question. So right now we look like we are standing up, and so we have lights above us, and so we think just like at home you have your lights on the ceiling, so that is up. But then you can do this like Randy's doing. And for him right now, it looks like for him, that he's standing up. So there's really no.
Now, at this point in time, he's spun in all different directions, which is not what he wanted to do. He wanted to do just a simple somersault. So he already knows he's in a bit of a mess, and so does his pal here, who's trying to help him out. But it's too late, and of course, as a result now, we get to see Randy having to bust out some of the most authentic, bizarre 80s robot dance moves I've ever seen a so-called astronaut have to do. Take it away, Randy.
Sense of direction other than maybe the writing on the walls and the lights that we have, which makes it really neat. When you're working, you can get in all different kinds of spots, and it all seems to work fine. So it's a great place to live and work.
Once more, look at the weird behavior Randy's having to knock out here. And again,
for him right now, it looks like for him, that he's standing up. So there's really no sense of direction other than maybe the writing on the walls and the lights that we have, which makes it really neat. When you're working, you can get in all different kinds of spots, and it all seems to work fine. So it's
absolutely ridiculous, Randy. But I tell ya, I can't pick a winner between you and Matey Boy over here. Perhaps that is a young Randy there in his old school gear. Certainly I can't pick a winner between the two of them. And I've got to thank Randy for his robot dance moves, highlighting the fact that these people use harnesses as part of their space pantomime production to get naive and weak-minded individuals to believe in absurdities, like space stations orbiting a scientifically impossible ball. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to put up with silly robot dances, harness failures, augmented reality failures, hairspray fetishes, and all the other stuff that goes on. Like I said originally at the start of this video, I'm going to show you a historical footage involving Russia and America that shows they're in bed together at the highest level. So show this to people, highlight this fact, particularly given the narrative being pushed by the mainstream media off the back of the Ukraine situation, and of course the ever increasing tensions being played out on our screen between Russia and America. You've only got to look at space missions involving American astronauts traveling on Russian rockets and see the failures on offer, exposing them at the highest level to be in bed together, liars, deceivers, to all their own people, and manipulating the general populace and hiding the truth.